Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shut Your Mouth podcast. Today with my guest, none other than Vic, the Spacelord. Vic, welcome to the show, buddy. It's really good to have you on.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, it has, man. It's been, last time I seen you, you were still living down in Vegas.
Yeah, that was like 3 years ago now, maybe
Yeah, I want to say maybe
remember.
2017.
Yeah, I don't know. I really have no conception of time whatsoever when it comes to years and when things have happened. So, like even like a buddy of mine who works in production for WWE and he does like a lot of other stuff came over just right around the Super Bowl, and he's like, "How long has it been since we've seen each other?" And I was like, "Whoa, it's like been almost 2 years, pretty much." And I was just like, time just goes, you know what I mean? Like even thinking about when I started and first met you, now it seems like it went by really quick, even though it wasn't going by quick.
Well, I was thinking about that. Wendy and I were actually talking about it the other day. And I kind of realized, like, it's coming up, man. It's got to be close to 25 years I've known most of you guys. You know,
yeah,
because I think, I'm 48, so I've known all you guys more than half my life now.
Yeah,
right? Like
same. Because I think it's 20, going on 21 years. I think is what
right,
it is. Because I started in October '99.
Okay.
So that was when I officially moved down to Calgary and dove on in.
Right. Well, what a trip that was, hey?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I can actually still remember insulting you the first time in the dungeon. And you know what? I actually admired your balls because it was an intimidating place. There was a lot of egos down there. And you had the really long hair, the beard, and you kind of had that look to you. So I said something and I looked at you, I was like, nice bump, Jesus. And you're like, don't call me Jesus. I'm like, all right, don't call that kid Jesus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I used to take big offense to that.
Well, a lot of times you don't know if a guy's kidding, but there's no question. Like, okay, he's not kidding, man. I will fuck with this guy,
Yeah, I think that during that time, I remember I was going to like security school as well to kind of fund myself, and everybody called me Satan while I was there. Some girl had said I looked like Satan, so everybody had called me that, except for the teacher, of course. He didn't call me Satan. But
he didn't think that was cool, eh?
He was an interesting cat, man. Like it was actually a pretty fun place. I remember like when I first moved to Calgary, I came from such a small town that like getting there and everybody as I was exposed to in so many different ways, like with wrestling and life, like it was awesome. Like I have no idea why I'm such a recluse and hermit now. I used to actually like people, and
well, because now you know what people are like, right?
I guess, yeah.
It's kind of a sad thing. The older I get, the nicer I get, but the less I like people because they take advantage of that niceness, right?
Yeah, well, I think it goes like with what George Carlin said on something where he was like, I like people for a minute, then I'm done.
Yeah,
and like, and I'm not always like that, but when I heard that, I was like, oh, I do feel like that all too often. It makes me feel kind of guilty.
Well,
most people are nice. Just a lot of the times I don't got anything to add.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, it's, you get to a point in life too, where you've spent as much time on the road as you have, as much time around people as you have, doing as many of the kind of the same interviews as you have, people start asking you questions and you almost just go into promo mode without even thinking about it. You just sort of blah, blah, blah. You just sort of shut off and start talking about the same old shit,
I guess I like with people, I would do that more. I guess we never really got to do interviews, even when we asked to. Like there was a couple times, I think we were scheduled to do some radio spots when we were in the UK, and they always got canceled. Or
really,
yeah, something else happened. We were like, hey, why can't we ever do interviews? And Crown would be like, no, we're going to get you guys on some. No, it never happened.
Yeah, that's one of those things, man. I'm just, I'm going to save this point. Just because it's one of those things, like we could go on all day about it. Like it's one of those, I'll quickly say something and we'll jump back. But you guys were one of those tag teams. Like, how can you be so successful at NXT and they literally have no idea what to do with you when they bring you up? Like, that's such a, and again, we could do a whole episode on that. You know what I mean?
Probably.
But what I want to get back to is this small town, Northern Alberta. If memory serves, you're from Grand Prairie, right?
Yep, sure am.
Okay. So
yeah, that's kind of where it all started in a way. You know what I mean? Because like I two of my best friends, like actually one of my best friends who I met when I was originally born in Edmonton, but I only lived there until I was about 6.
Right.
Something like that. And then we moved to Grand Prairie, and my next door neighbors were like all into Stampede wrestling and wrestling in general. And so we were all, like, I'd learned about wrestling. Like, I swear to God, the day I moved to town, like there was kids wrestling and like pretend, play wrestling in their front yard. And they're like, "Hey, do you know what this is?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, now you do." And it kind of never,
neighborhood.
Yeah, pretty much. And like, it kind of never stopped because like one of my best friends that I met at school was because I heard him talking about if Owen Hart was the Blue Blazer or not, because he had just watched, both Stampede and WWF from the weekend, and he's like, "Well, Owen was on one and the Blue and Blue Blazer was on the other," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh wow, like somebody else knows about wrestling, like cool." And that kid to this day is still one of my best friends. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, and then so just coming to the Hart Dungeon just seemed like the most logical choice for you. Like you just sort of thought, if I'm going to go train, that would be the place.
It was the only place that there really was. You know what I mean? Like at that time, like what I was only like I think 16 or 17 when I started thinking about it, because I was a high school dropout, but like I had a full-time job working at the bus station and stuff at the time. And I was trying to do homeschooling, but I was like, this ain't gonna work. So still to this day, I'm a high school dropout. I like to
yeah, well, you've done pretty well, buddy. You've done pretty well.
Yeah, I'm the worst example of like somebody to tell kids like, yeah, I dropped out of high school. Like that's just the top of the list. So,
man, I'm just going to tell I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm going to tell you a real quick story. Me and my 2 brothers, Crazy Dean, and our oldest brother, who's a university professor, and my dad, who quit school in grade 8, all went on a boys' trip one day. And I'm not kidding you. The 4 of us start talking wage. And my dad, the truck driver who quit school in grade 8, made more than the other 3 of us. And my other brother was a freaking PhD. That prick went to school for like 10 years.
Wow.
my dad, the truck driver, made the most.
Yeah, I remember hearing kids talk like that in high school whose like dads worked at like mechanic shops and stuff like that. And they're like, "Hey, like, whether I finish or not, like I got this job like waiting for me. It's already like big money. Like all of those jobs up there up north were big money back then."
Right.
You know what I mean? So even now, like when I first moved to the States, I was shocked to see like wage differences in everyday life, more or less. You know what I mean? Especially from where we were in Alberta. So
yeah, no kidding. Hey,
yeah,
that's massive wage disparity. The only upside to that, or I guess the biggest difference, probably be that, and I don't know what tax bracket you guys lived in, but I assume the average person probably pays a little less tax down there.
I think so, because the best way I can remember it is the last time, like when I got hired, and I was doing extra work. I got laid off from my job with Juggernaut, when we were being tree doctors and stuff, which he's still doing to this day, which is
good
awesome
for him, man.
But I got laid off because I didn't want to go to Saskatchewan, so just nonstop work, like cutting down forests or something,
right?
Because WWE was coming.
Well, you didn't want to be a lumberjack, eh?
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe I can come back to it if this doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And oh no, where was I going with that story again?
You got laid off.
Oh yeah, that's right. So nonetheless, I needed the money that I got from being like doing the extra work or whatever, because I was like, man, I'm strapped right now. And I remember when I got the check, because I had done the 2 days, and I remember when I was in the States, it was pretty good. You know what I mean? I got like $400 or something like that. So that's what I was expecting. And like over half of it was like gone to tax when I got it from in Canada. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I was trying to look to see what my paycheck had been like from like the job that I had just had, like tax wise, and I still felt like I got taxed more on that WWE check than I did on my normal job.
Oh, you got your
Know,
ass kicked on that first WWE check.
yeah. I was like, damn it, it sucks.
Goddamn IRS.
I had really needed that money at that time, but then I luckily got hired. So
yeah, good for you. Well, and that was one of those, I mean, I don't know if we've ever really sat down and talked too much about this, but I can tell you from all the guys, from this territory that watched you come up, it's always one of those things like you're proud of that guy because it makes it real that a guy from the vortex of Western Canadian wrestling can kind of make it, and B, it's a little bit of success for all of us. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, hey, in some small way, we all got there, right? And I don't think guys like yourself realize how much that means to the guys around here. You know what I mean? That to say like, okay, there's 3-4 people from PWA that that made it to the WWE. That's, and I don't want to understate that, and I don't think you guys should either. I think that's really a really cool thing that you guys, it may not have worked out the way and always often doesn't, right? Work out the way you want it to when you get there, but at the same time, I mean, no one can mess with the fact that you hit the mountaintop, right? Like, and look like you belonged there. More importantly.
I mean, I think most of the time I did. But too, and going to that point, like that was kind of something I always kept with me. And it wasn't like, man, this is for everybody, but it was like, man, there's a lot of people that invested time in me that they, didn't ever have to.
Right.
And I always felt like, especially when like things were super depressing, I was like, I can't quit because that sucks. Like if I quit, like there's a whole bunch of people that go, fuck.
Right.
And so that's no good. Like, and I just didn't have quit in me either, but that was something like that was always with me, like especially just everywhere I came from. Like I was so lucky to have like, guys like you and everybody else that was around in Stampede at the time. And, that are still around there to this day, and that have like how far those relationships have carried over, you know what I mean? I still talk to not enough people frequently, but it is funny. Like I talked to Juggernaut today, and like I haven't talked to Divine in long enough. Like he's one that that was awesome when I got to see him on the road because he got booked a few times while I was there. And it was just always funny to me because he was back to being angry Divine again. And I had, at that time, I was like, I got nothing. You know what I mean? I just had no answers for him because I was already so, I had already been where he was and far past like that anger, you know what I mean? And seeing him angry about it was just like, I have no answer. Like it's the way it is. You're angry for all the right reasons. I don't know. You can either accept the anger or, keep being angry.
Well, it's the same old thing whether you're talking, I think, independent wrestling or the top end, right? Like it, there's pros and cons, there's ups and downs, and it is what it is, and you take it or leave it, right? Like there's guys that I don't think they love the business any less, but just aren't willing to kind of put it all out there and kind of tolerate all this shit. And then there's those, I just blew some breakers, buddy. You still there? Oh shit. Just blew the breaker.
Probably. Yeah.
Hey, sorry, we're back. We had a little technical difficulty there. Cheap circuit breakers running my home. We were just talking about independent wrestlers and the anger some of them have with their situations.
Yeah, that's pretty common, And I wouldn't say somebody like Divine was always angry. I remember he was really angry when I started for the longest time, and then he chilled out for a while. And even I remember the first time I saw him on the road, once or twice. He actually came and he got booked for like a couple shows one time, and so we just got to hang out for like a few nights and stuff like that. That was pretty awesome, just getting to catch up and hang out. Then I remember one of the last times I saw him, his anger just kind of returned again. But It makes sense. He was one of those guys that kind of kept going, and I never felt he really got a fair shot. You know what I mean? Like in a way, like he was just somewhere where he should have been, and just never got that shot. So
Yeah. And it wasn't, the thing about him is it wasn't for a lack of talent or a lack of passion
yeah,
or what I mean? It
exactly.
just he's one of those guys like when you look at what makes it and what doesn't, sometimes you can't make sense of it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
and I've seen that so many times, like
yeah.
through so many places. Because like even I can remember when I was first at FCW, like sitting in Dusty Rhodes promo class, I was like, man, I've seen a lot of people that would do really well, like right here, right now, and they're not here. And that wasn't anything against the people who were there at the time, but it was something that like I would think of quite a bit. I was, seen so many talented people and so creative and talented people in my in this trip I've taken.
Well, I mean, I always used, because of course, because I'm Canadian, everything always comes back to hockey, right? And I would
Yeah,
say like not always the most skilled player is the NHL. Not always the fastest skater is in the NHL. You know what I mean? There's a
yeah,
bunch of factors that go, but sometimes it's just getting a look at the right time or the right person happened to see at the right place at the right time. Do you know
hundred
what I
percent.
mean?
Yeah, it
You know,
100% is, especially with wrestling.
yeah,
That's something I've seen more often than anything else. It's just right place, right time.
yeah.
Even for me, like right place, right time.
Well, and
So
I mean, and you're one of those guys too, and Divine definitely falls into this category as well. That,
yeah,
like you say, you weren't willing to give up. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you say, you'd put, between your training with Tokyo Joe and the stuff, even the shit you put yourself through.
yeah,
Never mind, like you say, you'd mention your gratitude for people that had given you their time or support to kind of try and
yeah,
get you there. And I mean, you put in all that work, and then, you know, some guys come up short and they don't feel they were successful. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I never made it to the
yeah,
WWE, but I don't feel like I was unsuccessful. I just feel like it was just, wasn't meant for me, or that wasn't my thing. Right.
yeah. Well, you're in
Um,
the PWA Hall of Fame, brother.
yeah, that and $2 will get me a cup of coffee. Well, actually two
I
dollars
mean,
10.
it's a Hall of Fame nonetheless. So don't sell yourself short.
Well, I mean, but okay, so if we want to talk about that realistically, if I'm in there and you're not, there probably shouldn't be a PWA Hall of Fame. Do you
I
know what I
mean,
mean?
I'm not done yet. We still got time.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I believe, if and when things come back to normal and they start running again, I'm pretty sure it'll happen. Um, especially now that you're kind of in a position where you can be.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
know.
mean?
I'd talked with. I had talked with Kurt. I'm pretty sure after I'd gotten released and stuff like that, and I
Right.
think um, it was, and I mean, it had been talked about pretty much, so it was going to happen, and then yeah, COVID hit.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, you're one of those guys like, holy Christ, we should bring the Awakening in, right? And it's like, yeah,
uh,
but we'd have to put 3 tag teams in there for them to squash because you guys are freaking monsters compared to the rest of us, right? Like, we don't have anybody that can stack up.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there's. I'm
Well,
sure you guys have got
and
some
don't get me wrong.
guys.
I mean, between like MRB, BVD, Chris Steele, we have some really good workers that be able to work with you guys. Right. So
Man,
I don't want to come
yeah,
across as we got a roster as they, there's a roster full of squashers over there. That was
yeah.
probably the
Well,
wrong
see,
way to paint.
actually, BVD and putting BVD and Chris Steele in a team together would probably be very equal. Except my memory is those two guys are probably meaner in the ring than me and Connor. So
Right. Well,
I
did you
remember.
listen to the other podcast? Did you listen to the interview I did with Spencer Love a while ago? And I told the story about the rib I pulled on Chris Steele. Well,
No, no.
I'll quickly tell this one again. So
All right.
Steele and I were tagging together, traveling together, and we work a program with the Western Lions, MRB and BVD.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And one of those programs where you work tag matches, then you start working some singles matches, and then you go back to a big blow off in another tag match. And so it was time for the singles matches, and I worked MRB, and Steele was going to work BVD. So Steele's on his way getting ready to go to the ring, and BVD asked me, he goes, "Hey man, is there anything I need to know? Like, what do I got to watch out for?" And I was like, "Well, don't make Steele sell any garbage." Like, and BVD's snug anyways. So I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, make sure you really lay it in with him. Like he likes it really snug. So we're, of course, me, man, I forgot I did it, right?
Yeah.
And we're driving home and we're kind of talking about the matches, and he looks over, he goes, "Holy shit, is that guy stiff?" And then I realized, I was like, "Oh yeah, man, that's my fault."
It's too good.
Yeah, that was I forgot I did that until I was talking to a guy the other day.
Yeah, he's something else, man. I always remember one of the last matches I had with him. I couldn't believe how hard it was to get him to stay down. Like he was just always back up, and like not in a hard to work with kind of way. But I was like, Jesus, I'm tired in like 2 minutes working with you because I have to stay on you. And this is a 3-way dance or something. Like,
can you long sell for just half a second, please?
Yeah, no, he had nothing. Like just nothing. I'm trying to remember if I think it was me and Randy at the end were like both in a figure 4 or something like that. And I think he was coming to frog splash us. And I think he was up before we were even in the figure 4, like on the top. And we're like, Jesus, okay. You know what I mean?
Steel the Undertaker?
Yeah, like he just kept going. He's like the Energizer Bunny. So.
Oh man, he's one of those guys. Like you probably haven't seen him lately, and this is probably boring for people that don't know. But you know, he was always around 250, 245, 250, and he went on this program called F45. It was like some sort of a boot camp and a diet, and he got down to 207.
Well, that's weird because that's like I was at that weight for a while, but there's not too much lighter than me now, really. Yeah. But that'd be weird for him because he was always just a brick shit house.
Yeah, I think he was 6% body fat. Like he was shredded. His legs looked massive. Yeah.
I used to see his pictures on something. But I don't feel like I've seen anything for a while.
Yeah, well, that's because he's hiking in the woods now. You know, if anyone's wondering where Chris Steele is, he's a Yeti now. He's out literally every day. You see his Facebook pictures, or he's out in Banff or something.
Nice. Yeah. That's a good way to be.
Yeah. So what are you doing now, man? What's going on? What are you at?
Well, I just wrestled my first match. Well, we just had our first match back in like a year because of when COVID hit. Like it just kind of that wiped out everything that we had booked.
You
at this time last year because we had a lot of stuff that was about to happen, and then COVID just wiped it all out, and then just throughout the rest of that year, just it was always like working on something, and then people wouldn't be able to run. And it was just kind of what it kept going to. And so in that time, like Connor, he's a trainer at Jay Lethal's school here. So he started doing that. Okay. And I've just been kind of living the dream, more or less. Yeah, it's really silly. Like I just read a lot. One day I realized I was stupid, like really stupid, like for a high school dropout, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I should probably learn something other than just reading Batman comic books and like every Neil Gaiman book known to man. And I just started doing that, and that kind of more or less got my brain going again. So, and then we started getting bookings again, and one of them got canceled, and then one of them we finally did with it's Atomic Revolution Wrestling. I hope I said that right. I know it's ARW.
Yeah.
But so we just had a match with the Headbangers there last Friday.
How'd that go?
And it was pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
We were really happy about that. It was really cool to see a place with people in it again and, perform in front of a crowd.
Right.
And it's awesome. Like a whole bunch of old friends that I hadn't seen for a while on that show. So it was just fun all around. And too, like, it was cool to see that the Headbangers there in that environment. Because we had met, they came back for a couple shows at one time on Raw. And I remember we were in I think it was probably like a 12-man tag team or something like that. And I just remember like I was standing on the apron and like looking over, and I'm like, okay, there's like Gotch and English, Connor, and the Headbangers. I'm like, and then across the ring, it was like the Spirit Squad, and I think the Usos, and Gable and Jordan, I think is who it was. And I'm like, this is so weird.
Is that one of those holy shit, I think I made it moments?
It was just, and I knew Mikey, you know what I mean, from Spirit Squad, because he was in OVW when I was there. And so I was really happy he was there. It was just one of those really weird, surreal moments, I guess. Like, I don't know. I made it moment. I think the minute I got there.
Right.
As
They took that out of you pretty quick.
As sad as that is to say, I can remember standing behind that curtain. I was like, "Oh, this is it. Fuck. All right,
here we are.
Here, let's see what happens next." But I mean, there was a lot of moments that were, totally surreal, and that I'm thankful for all of that stuff. That was just one of those weird ones because, like, I was like, man, the Headbangers. I loved them when I was a kid wrestling, or like right as I started almost getting into wrestling was kind of when they were around.
They were fun, man. I like those guys.
Yeah, and there were two guys who like I didn't. It's odd the people that you kind of run into and meet along the way, and the people that you don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just because I always said like it's too bad I never met Rick Martel.
No doubt.
Like, yeah, and I don't think I ever got to meet Tito because like those were two of my favorites when I was a kid.
Right.
Stuff like that. And those were guys too. Like when you talk about them with different people, there's like cool stories. Or like Rick Martel. I grew up with him on WWF doing that stuff when he was such a heel, like just the epitome of heels. And he was the biggest baby face around in every other territory before then. So,
well, that model gimmick was like, I tried to be Joe Cool and not react too much to the gimmicks and stuff, but I would just be incensed with that perfume spray.
Oh yeah, man. When I was a kid, that like he was the one you hated the most, more than anybody.
Yeah, so. I would try and no sell it, but I hated that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Or like when I was a kid too, I hated Ted DiBiase, and then as I became a wrestler, he became one of my favorites of all time to watch wrestle. Right. And he was also one of the guys that like when I met him, he was super cool, and he actually like gave us good advice. Like he gave us stuff that I would still use in matches in the right instance because it was awesome.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's cool when you get to kind of be around some of that, right? Like when you were really, you were fortunate when you came into the dungeon that we were running a lot of shows, at least like the Hearts, man. Like you say, they toured. I remember at one point there was a tour, and people don't believe this anymore, but there was a tour, man. They did 68 shots in 72 nights, I think.
Oh wow! Holy
what I mean? That was pretty. I think that was the Highlander. Like the Highlander literally went out of the dungeon after 3 months, and I think went on that tour.
Yeah, because I think that was what inspired me to kind of get my butt going, because you guys had been gone and Rob had been gone for so long. And I was like, what's going on? Because like I think me and Highlander kind of started around the same time, like me and him and Ruffy. And all of a sudden they were all gone. And I was like, it was like 3 months later. And I can kind of remember Highlander being like, holy fuck, we were just on tour for fucking ever. It's just never ending. I was like, what? I was like, I want to go work some shows, man. And like, I remember I got to do kind of like the last few that they did when they were doing that schedule. And it was awesome. Like, but I couldn't have asked for like a better week or two in wrestling.
Well, the upside is you got to try something new every single night, but the downside was you never had anybody with any experience to learn from. It was all just a bunch of us knuckleheads going out there and kicking the shit out of each other to see what worked.
True. Yes. Well, I know I worked with Bill Yates, my first week-long tour. It was fine. We had some fun, I don't have any ill memories of it. Like I remember I used to keep like the steel chair that he beat me with every night. I think I still had it in my closet back in Calgary forever.
Is that right?
Like, and I had a piece of like a table that I think we used at one point in time. Nice. Stuff like that. So
did you kind of keep a lot of that through the years? Like the first poster you were on, the first time you main evented on a poster, that sort of stuff?
I know I used to have a lot of that stuff, and I can't remember if it's in storage at my mom's house.
Right.
Because I used to be really good about keeping all that stuff. And like I kept a lot of the Japanese magazines and stuff like that that I'd been in, prior to all that stuff. And then it's funny because I swear by the time I got to WWE, some of the only things that I've kept are like odd, probably like live event cards, or like I had a bunch of like NXT cards, like from when we were at live events that like I kept.
Oh, okay.
And I kept the majority of our promos that were printed out so that I could always look back and laugh because a lot of it's pretty silly.
Wow.
So, and I like having it in print so that if anybody, is ever like, hey, what about that time? Like one of these, I have to organize it all because I just would always like throw them in my bag and then I'd get home and just throw them in a spot. You know what I mean? So like everything is just like a huge pile of all these papers and,
memorabilia.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, then now when I look around, like this is my office and this is probably the messiest room that I have right now. That's why you only see this back part because there's wrestling gear all laid out from when I got home on Friday night. And like I've been training a bunch lately and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's the way she goes, right? Like everything's a multi-purpose room.
Yeah.
So. Like I'm sitting at my wife's quote unquote office right now with a Peloton. I don't know which side behind me there.
Oh, good.
Slash on the wall over there, wine painting back there.
Yeah.
It is what it is, man.
Exactly.
Plus, I mean, Messi's, people say like cluttered desk, cluttered mind. I say, man, I know where everything is. It's on the floor.
Yeah. Well, let's see. There's only like a couple things I can't find in here that's bothering me because I've saved a bunch of 8x10s that I've gotten from people over the years too.
Okay.
And some are like funny ones or like funny ones that like I've done. And like my old tag partner from OVW had sent me like, it was one of our 8x10s that we did in OVW, but we did two. And one was like for when we were baby faces, which didn't last very long. And one was our other one. And the one when we were baby faces was like both of us being like double guns, like big smiles and stuff.
Super.
And I kept it. Yeah. And he told me, he goes, I don't remember that one. I'm like, how do you not remember that? Like that was like our favorite secret one that we had. And I kept one for a while and now I can't find it. I know it's somewhere in this mess here. So
I mean, it sounds funny, but even my barber, he asked me, I've been seeing the same barber since about 2003. And finally I was in for a haircut and he's like, hey, how come you never, he's a Muslim kind of says, hey, how come you never bring me a picture? I'm like, well, you never asked me for a picture. He goes, do you have pictures? I go, yeah, I have pictures. And he goes, well, bring me a picture. I'm like, okay. And he goes, I can't believe you never brought me a picture. I was like, you think I just go around handing out pictures to people?
Well, we've known some people who have, you know what I mean? I've met many people who are, hey, let me give you an 8x10 for dinner or something like that. You know what I mean? Or put this up here. So, but yeah, I've never been one of those either. Like I can tell anytime, like when I meet somebody, like even in life or whatever, I can tell they want one. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm always like, oh crap, it's really awkward if I don't say it now. Like, hey, do you want one?
Right. Yeah. I'm always going to be like, hey, do you want one? And then they say no, and I'm going to look like a total idiot.
Yeah. So thankfully for me, it doesn't happen too often, but I've learned well enough when I've met somebody and I'm like, oh, this is a time. This is one of those times.
Man, I've stood out my house for days trying to give my photos away. Nobody will have any. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I don't.
So you're a free agent right now.
Yeah. So
have you been talking to anybody? Like if you had your choice, money's no object. You just want to go where you want to go, do what you want to do. Are you going to work the independents or are you going to sign somewhere?
I mean, I think it's possible to kind of do both with some of the places nowadays. I'm not too sure. I really like freedom. Like we're both really big on freedom. That's why we haven't, like, I guess, been banging down the doors to like the bigger companies and stuff right now. And I'm not saying that there's not obviously freedom in that, but like I needed a big reset more than anything. And Connor's kind of been in a better mindset and he really loves teaching the schools at Tampa Bay Pro. And but like too, we're a lot more restless now. Like I think like when we first got released and started doing stuff, it was like, man, we came out and we were just ready to go. And when COVID just suddenly took everything away, it was like, I immediately just went back into like, okay, I'm at home and recentering again, and kind of figuring that out. And so I think now too, like I had to let go of a lot of negative stuff. Like forever, I thought back only on negative things, and so I couldn't even look towards the future positively.
Right.
Like I couldn't even watch wrestling positively for a while, and I had to get rid of all that. So now it seems there's a lot more positive things going on, at least, and like with both of us, with our gears turning and doing what we're doing, like I kind of just want to work as many places as possible.
Right.
You know, there's so much good talent out there, and like people that we want to work with, all all over in different places.
Right.
And I think like the way wrestling is, at least for me, has always been just things will happen when they're meant to happen,
Right.
the way they happen. You know what I mean? And just the drive's finally like started to kind of come back to do things again.
Finding passion again.
Yeah, because just for like a long time, it just felt like I would only do it because it's a job, and so now I'm starting. I've really started to like find it again. Like I get fired up to do stuff.
Good, man.
Yeah. So, but it's very weird because I'm also like a very much nowadays. It's like I've got to be doing it to be excited about it, or like to even really like be worried about it, or whatever it is. Like I took this kid Wheezy from the school down with me. He was getting booked for the show. And he's like, are you excited? And I was like, no. He's like, are you nervous? I'm like, no. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it just takes me to like actually get there. Like
Yeah.
the drive there, I'm like more excited about this drive right now than I am thinking about like what I'm going to do. But when I get there, then I'll be excited about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or like once I'm doing it, like then I'm excited about it. So it's, I used to dread a lot or get excited about, or like, I get anxiety about wrestling all the time.
Right.
And that, it's never easy to deal with when you're a performer. And you have anxiety about
That's your
everything that you're
job.
supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. For the
And like
biggest
that's,
company in the world.
yeah, 100%. And like that's always what's kind of been funny, because people are always like, Connor is so friendly. And I'm like, yeah, he's the friendly one of the two of us. And he's just so much better at dealing with people than I am.
Right.
And it's not that I don't like people. Uh, I'm one of those people who also gets anxiety and doesn't, know what to say a lot of the time.
The thing with you is you've always been,
So,
I mean, I've known you since you were a pretty young guy.
yeah.
And you've always been a bit of an introvert, right? Like if you're around people and you're comfortable with, you're definitely, a good guy, like a good funny storyteller, you'll come out. But if you're in a room full of people you don't know, you don't have a lot to say generally.
No, I will sit there and I'll just listen to what everybody else has got to say.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that's not a bad thing though, right? Like I'd rather kind of deal with the guy that sort of watches what he says than some guy that opens the door and steps in shit the minute he comes in,
Yeah. Well, I've done exactly that too many times, so I know better. The minute the minute I get too comfortable in a place, I probably shouldn't be too comfortable and I'll step into shit. So
yeah. It wouldn't be the first time I farted in church.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all right, man. Well, I'm gonna let you go. I want to come back, and if you'd be okay, I want to bring you back on and talk solely about Dungeon Times.
Okay.
Well, not only that, but the times you and I, you're one of the guys too that I spent a lot of time. I was thinking about a while ago. I didn't realize how much time you and I spent in the car together, going back and forth from Edmonton.
Yeah. Well, I remember Divine managed to like figure out a number for a few of us at one point in time, because and it was a ton of hours.
Right?
Because we always did those trips and stuff together, you know what I mean? And it was only really a few of us always like rode together almost all the time. So, but it was crazy. I remember he had the number for it because he was a little math genius like that, figured it out.
And he was a guy too, man. I mean, you figure when he went down to when he first went down to TNA and was working all those little indies down south, like that guy put some miles on.
Oh, yeah.
Then I think forward to you guys, like how many days a year were you working when you made it to the bigs? What were you, 250, 275 days a year on the road?
I don't know, because the first couple of years was a lot.
Right.
But I know, like I remember the longest, it was hard to tell. because like I said, I have no concept of time. So it just became,
Hey
it
man, when
all
you're
got
Vic the
so,
Space Lord, you always have been and always will be. Time's not a thing.
yeah, I like it all just like fades because it's all just, one constant string of everything.
Right.
And like at first, because at first was before the split for like a while. I think that was like a year. And so that was a lot of 5 to 6 days a week,
Right.
gone and on the road. And so I
Right.
remember we did like the 2 week Euro tour, I think twice that year as well. So like that one was a lot.
Yeah.
I know the second year when we got the draft, it kind of slowed down like a little bit. We had like, I think we had an extra day off
A
sometime.
whole day.
Yeah, but that was the funny one because then we were on SmackDown, and so SmackDown was still on Tuesdays, and so Mondays there was either no show or a live event.
Right.
And so either you were doing nothing on the road or you were working a live event that at first had like the smallest crowds I'd ever seen for WWE for. And
Is that right? Eh?
within 6 months, we were starting to sell those bitches out. That crew is awesome. So,
Nice. Good for you guys, man. So it's probably that's probably a cool thing to see is you actually watch yourself build the build a crowd up.
Yes. A funny thing was eventually I think we heard that Vince got mad because SmackDown started to beat Raw.
Well, and then they had a draft, right? Because when AJ first went to SmackDown, you guys were over there. There was, and I don't mean to piss on anybody in any way, shape, or form, but kind of all the workers were on that roster.
There was a super, like, everybody was awesome. Like that was one of my favorite crews, like from top to bottom. Was that first SmackDown draft crew,
right?
And that roster we got. Like I remember we went on tour like right after everybody got drafted, and it was just some of the most immense fun that I think I ever had on tour, like that whole time.
Right. So, well, and oddly enough, then like you say, Vince didn't like that very much, and then of course they had the redraft, and from the outsider just looking in, watching television rating, probably should have just left well enough alone.
I know. I can't. Bruce Pritchard said it a long time ago. Whatever doesn't make sense is why it makes sense, and that's usually the best answer you can get for these things. It's always been about as true can be in all of the cases that I've ever.
Well, and that's why Bruce Pritchard's who he is, right?
Yeah, because like Dr. Tom first said it to me in FCW, and it sunk home. And then I heard Bruce say it afterwards, and I was like, well, one of them said it first. I don't know which one said it first. I heard Doc say it first, but
so he takes
Bruce,
credit.
Well, Bruce said it when he was talking about, I heard him when he was, one of the older podcasts when they were first going over old pay-per-views. And so he gave that as a reason when Conrad was like, well, why would somebody do that? He's like, because it doesn't make sense. That's just how it was back in the day. Like, well, you stop asking why, because the answer is because it doesn't make sense. That's the only answer that there is. Well, it's the only answer you get.
Because it doesn't make sense. All right, my friend. It's been so good chatting with you. So great catching up with you, man. It's been too long. We'll do this again in a fairly short period, buddy. Thank you so much for your time. And anything you want to plug? How can people book you guys? How can people get a hold of you? How can other interviewers get a hold of you?
I mean, you can hit me up on Instagram. Same with Connor. Mine's Vic _the _Spacelord. You can hit us up there. Yeah, that's about it for the way to get a hold of us, more or less. I think that's how most people do it anyway. Occasionally, Connor gives away my email, but I'm not going to do that on a podcast because half the time I don't want to do interviews. So,
right. All right, people, you heard it here first. Get out and book the best tag team that is not signed to a major company today. Get out there and book the Awakening to your event. Vic, can't thank you enough again, man. We'll talk to you very soon, sir. Thanks so much for your time,
man. Thank you, buddy. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Vic the Spacelord, and you're watching is it Duke You Suck podcast?
Yeah.
You Suck podcast.
Yes.
Hey, I'm Vic the Spacelord, and you're watching. Okay, I'll stay in camera. Must have had too much vodka by now. All right. Hey, I'm Vic the Spacelord, and you're watching the Hey Duke, You Suck podcast. Hey Duke, you suck.
Duke, you suck.